Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight on Late Night in the Rockies on We Are Paradox Media. Tonight, we are going to step into the paranormal with David Spinks, and Dave has been investigating and researching the supernatural since 1986 due to several experiences he had as a young man. Since that time, he's conducted several hundred investigations in the U.S. as well as Europe. Dave served in the U.S. Air Force for 8 years and went on to work as a federal law enforcement officer, retiring in 2011. During his paranormal investigations, Dave has experienced many hair-raising and unnerving things, as one might imagine. Having investigated strange phenomena for over 30 years, he has built many friendships with some of the most well-known investigators in the field today. He has been seen on various television shows to include Terror in the Woods, Paranormal 911, The Unexplained, In Search of Monsters, and The Woods Are Haunted, to name a few. He has also been featured in the film Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear by Small Town Monsters, and he has been a featured guest on hundreds of paranormal-themed radio shows and podcasts. Dave is often featured guest speaker at paranormal conferences around the country. He is also an author on topics that include cryptids, haunting, ufology, and is also an author on, releasing his book, West Virginia Bigfoot, in 2018, and was featured in the highly successful Wood Knock series by David Weatherly. Hey Dave, welcome to the show. So great to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So happy Labor Day weekend. I hope everything's been going good with you and the family.
Oh yeah, hanging out, enjoying the last days of summer,
Yeah, it seems like it went by really fast, but I think it seems that way every year. There's just not enough time off, but it's always good to have the kids go back to school and get some adult time.
Absolutely. But then you have to run around and run kids to sports and practice and everything else.
Right?
So it's a little hectic, especially this time of year, doing all the paranormal stuff. This is the busiest time of year for me. And, and kids back to school, and you got to add all that in. It makes it pretty hectic.
Yeah, it makes you wish for more time off. So, when was your earliest paranormal experience? What got you interested in the field of the paranormal?
Well, actually, it was the Bigfoot experience I had with my grandfather back in 1983 when we witnessed, what I can only describe as a Bigfoot, and throwing enormous rocks at us from the other side of the river. And that kind of set me on my path, wanting answers as to what it was that I experienced and saw that day. And then it must have been about a year and a half, 2 years later, I had a ghostly experience with my other grandfather. You often hear these type of stories. You have somebody sick in your family, they end up dying, and then you get a visitation. And that's kind of how it happened with that. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was very sick. Had cancer and everything. Only had a quarter of one lung left, and actually had a hole in his throat where he breathed oxygen through, and he still smoked through the hole in his throat. Just didn't care, I was at my dad's house that summer, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and there he stood in the room with me, as clear as a bell, solid. He looked good, and I noticed he didn't have the trach tube in his throat. And I kind of did a double take and said, "What are you doing here, Papaw?" And he didn't say nothing. He just smiled and disappeared right in front of my face. And I was like, "Whoa, that was a weird dream." So I just went back to sleep. And the next day, I couldn't get that off my mind. So I called up to my grandma and grandpa's house, and my uncle from out of state answered the phone. And I said, "What are you doing there?" And my uncle said, "No one called you yet, Dave?" I said, "No, why?" He said, "Well, your grandpa died last night and everybody's coming in." So I never said anything about the dream until about 6 months later. We were all up at my grandmother's eating and visiting her. And it was just bugging me. I said, I'm going to tell everybody about this dream. They're going to think I'm nuts, but what the heck? I can't get it off my mind. I got to tell somebody. So I let it fly at the dinner table. And I noticed several members of my family, their faces went white, and they all said they had the same exact experience the night he died. So I knew sent me even further, down the rabbit hole, so to speak, is wanting to know more and wanting to try to find answers as to what happens to us when we die. And this whole transition and these experiences really affected my life to the extent where I was reading anything and everything I could about unknown creatures, UFOs, ghostly happenings, and the whole nine, and it really set me on a path over all these years, trying to find answers to some of man's greatest questions. What happens to us when we die? Are there unknown creatures walking among us, and are we alone in the universe? And that's why I do what I do today.
That's awesome, and I commend you for that. While you, did you start doing paranormal investigation as far as with teams and such before or after your military service?
I was actually investigating during that whole time. I first started investigating, after my experiences as a young man, 16, 17 years old. I saw the show In Search Of. There was a guy on there named Hans Holzer who was actually doing a paranormal investigation at a house, and he had the same type of tape recorder I had gotten for Christmas, old cassette player with a microphone, you plug in. And he was actually capturing EVPs, and I thought that was fascinating. So I had the same type of recorder. So I went out whenever we went somewhere on family vacations. We would always go to these cool locations like Native American ruins and all these other places. And I started trying to capture EVPs. And on one particular trip, I caught my first EVP at Mesa Verde, right there near you. And I caught some Native American chants. Really hooked on that. I was like, wow, how do you explain that? There was no one there the day we were there. I mean, we saw maybe like two people. There was no reenactment, anything going on or anything, so, just one thing led to another, kind of snowballed, hobby gone insane. And, I was, one thing led to another in my professional life where, somebody who knew me, their friend was experiencing something in their home or whatever the case. And they say, hey, I know a guy that does that. And then they would get a hold of me and I would go investigate their homes, and then over the years, it just spiraled into, nonstop investigating really. And then when I retired in 2011, 12, that's when I decided I'm going to go public with what I do. And I formed a team back then. And it was comprised of law enforcement officers. We had a psychologist and several other people. But as the story goes with most teams, people working a job every day, they don't have the time and they don't really have the time and the money to put into what it takes to actually do this and live this life. So, it's very time consuming and very expensive, to say the least, when you're doing it full time. And, so, I had teams, and then the teams would break up, and I kept doing what I do and working with many, many people in the fields, and I'm still doing it to this day.
That's awesome. And it's true what you say. You can actually go broke doing this. And do you guys volunteer your services?
Oh, absolutely. I've never, ever charged to help someone. I mean, that's just not how you do this, because there's no guarantees in any of this. It's not like, we're some kind of medical doctor where you have an illness and you can go in and pretty much cure it. There's no guarantees. We don't actually know to this day what we're communicating with, 100%. We can kind of take educated guesses based off of experience, and other things. But, some of these extreme hauntings, they can go on for years and years, and you can knock them down, but you can never get rid of them. So you just never know what we're actually dealing with when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and every story seems to be different, and everything just takes different things to kind of work with it or get it out of the house. sometimes it's impossible, like you said, or have the people be comfortable with what it is now that they know what it is and they can peacefully cohabitate with it.
Right. Yeah, it's a crapshoot, really. You can go in, try to do some different things, different techniques, try to knock it down. But in my personal opinion, some of these tragic deaths and some of these just horrible, horrendous things that have happened in some of these locations, in my opinion, it stains the very ground, and you can never get rid of it. So, and that's just based off of my experiences, over so many years of doing this.
Yeah, and a lot of people are surprised. They'll build a house and move into it, and then they have activity, but it's like you said, it has nothing to do with the structure. It's really basically the land that the house is built on.
Yeah, it can go so many different ways. You just never know what you're dealing with. It's like an onion. Some of these locations and some of these things have so many layers, and you got to peel back the layers. You could literally spend your whole career on one case. I mean that's a real. You can literally spend a whole paranormal career on one case if it's that intense and that in depth.
So can you tell us a bit about some of your paranormal experiences while you were in the military, like overseas or whatnot? Is it different than here?
I mean, not really different, but you know, when I was in Italy, I was stationed over there for 5 years, and I walked the streets of Venice, one of the oldest cities on the planet, and would capture EVPs. And you got to remember, they don't speak English, so you know, I would try to ask EVPs, ask questions in Italian. I knew enough basic Italian where I could ask basic general questions, and you would capture EVPs in Italian and other languages. It's fascinating stuff. So, and you can even ask questions in English. That doesn't mean you're going to get a response in English, but it's pretty fascinating when you capture EVPs in other languages as well. But I investigated a monastery called Lucido Monastery in northern Italy, built in the 1500s, and it was overgrown. It's been abandoned for many, many years. Who knows? I don't even know how long, but we caught some chanting on recordings there, and there's rumors of all this satanic worship that have taken place in modern times there. And I took two of my big military police buddies with me. They're supposed to be tough guys, and they heard, they were hearing stuff and hearing chanting. And when I played back the recorder, they heard the chanting, and they were so scared, man. They ran out of there and left me by myself.
You're like, hey, wait a minute.
I told you guys, and they were all talking tough, like they could handle it and everything. But it's pretty cool to be able to do some investigations overseas. And I spent 5 years over there, and there was one place I always wanted to go, but I could never get a local to take me, and that was Poveglia Island. And my good friend David Weatherly had just been there and investigated it, and man, I'm so jealous because I spent 5 years over there, and I literally nobody would even talk to you about going to that place. It's so negatively haunted. And of course, Ghost Adventures had investigated that as well, and super, super haunted place, tens of thousands of deaths. That's where they would take all the bubonic plague victims, and they it's pretty much like an island of bones there, man. I mean, it's just so many people died there. And, the history over in that part of the country is so much more in depth than we have here in the United States. England and all over that whole area is just really, really steep in history. And, millions of people have died from many different wars and black plagues and sickness and the whole nine yards. So,
yeah, there's a real rich and in-depth history. We have one here, but that is much more ancient and has gone back longer and longer than we have here as far as being Americans. As far as Native Americans, there's a lot of things going on here that we still don't quite understand as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you guys have
cases that worked over the years have Native American ties?
Native American what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said a lot of the cases that we're working now here in the States, it goes back, and many of them have Native American ties. It was sacred hunting land, sacred burial ground, whatever the case, that is protected by elementals or Native American spirits, and a lot of these hauntings and different paranormal phenomena that go on have a direct tie to some of the Native Americans, that were here way, way before us.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And have you guys had any luck getting maybe elders or shaman or anything to come in and bless a property or try to help you guys in any way to clear the property of these energies?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I utilize whoever I can, and each individual case is different. So, and I'm lucky enough to actually work with a shaman many times. With David Weatherly, who's studied the shamanic and different shamanic practices. Tibetan. He's done stuff in Tibet, and also here with Native Americans and other folks. You just have to kind of decipher what's going on, what's causing it, and then you have to, it's cause and effect. You try different techniques to see if you can get the haunting activity to be quelled at some point, get rid of it totally or knock it way down so the families can live in there, in peace with the spirits, or by getting rid of the spirits that are there haunting them.
It was funny, we went on vacation this year to California, and the property that my nephew lives on, they had actually dug up some bones several times during preparing the property and building and whatnot, and the people out there actually charged them $3,000 per time they went out there, and that's the first I've heard of someone charging for such a thing. Like out here, it's kind of like a ritual where if a body is disturbed, then they'll come out and they'll do a ceremony and blessings and whatnot to put the spirit back at peace. Have you had any experience with natives charging you for this sort of work, or they do it as it's a part of what they need to do to help their clan, even deceased?
Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's something different. I mean, usually if in my experience anyway, if we call in a Native American shaman or medicine person, they gladly will help to try to, quell those spirits and set them at peace, when we need to help, say, hey, this is an accidental something, they were building this house and they came across these bones and da 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 da. And can you come in and please, make this right? And yeah, I've never heard of anyone charging like that. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I thought it was insane. I was like, holy crap, how do they expect people to do the right thing if they're charging so much? But I guess it takes all kinds to make the world go round. But out here, I found it interesting talking to different natives and different experiences that they had and how they dealt with it. And one girl was telling me that her mother put a bunch of different foods on a plate and put it outside. And being a little girl, she would watch out the window and just wait for the spirits to come up and take it. And after a few days, she's like, Mom, why aren't they taking the food? Do they not like it? And I guess her mom had her take a bite out of an apple or whatever, and there was no taste to it. They basically took the essence of the food and not really literally the food. So I thought that was pretty interesting way to appease a spirit. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just, it's trial and error, different techniques, and some, you got to kind of try different things to see what works.
So I remember when we talked last time about your Bigfoot experience with your grandpa, he had somewhat sworn you to secrecy, and that was another thing that you kind of kept on your shoulders for so many years. And then you said later on that he'd actually told people. Can you tell us kind of what you went through with that and how it was when you finally came out, how that made you feel, and the surprise that you had with the outcome?
Well, I mean, it wasn't, doing what I've done for so many long. I mean, people knew who I was and what I do, but doing all these radio shows and whatnot, you always get the question, well, what started you in the, what experience started you? And I never really talked about it because, I mean, I would talk about the other experience with my other grandfather, but I didn't talk about the Bigfoot one, which was the one that really set me off in doing this because I made a promise to him. And then so many, once I went public with it, and once right before I was going to go public with it and put it in the book, the Woodknocks book with my buddy David Weatherly's book series, I said, well, I'm going to call my uncle and let him know what I'm doing because I want to let people know. I don't want it to be a surprise to the remaining family members. So I told him about it, and he nonchalantly said, oh, you're talking about that monkey man you and Papaw saw all those years ago. And I was like stunned because here I kept it, a secret kind of for all these years. And here he had told my uncle about it like 25 years before, this happened. And, I was like, he told you? And he said, yeah, and I was like, wow. And I said, I kept this secret all these years. And he said, well, he came to me and said that, he wanted someone else in the family to know what we saw that day in case something ever happened to him, which I can understand that, So, then I didn't feel as bad about coming out with the story. So, it was kind of a big relief and everything.
Yeah. That's good that you were able to get that before you did write your book and come out on different shows with it. Have you had other Bigfoot experiences besides the one with your grandpa?
Not well. The only over the years, obviously, I've actively investigated Bigfoot sightings and accounts, and I've actually gone out on expeditions trying to document more evidence of these creatures. And I've had some experiences, but I've never seen another one. I've heard, we've tried wood knocking, we've tried rock clacking, all types of things. We've heard them scream and howl in the woods, but never seen one, again. So, it's, to me, it's a very rare thing, I don't know what they are. All I know is there was a living, breathing creature that was really pissed off that when I saw it, in 1983, and it really changed my life, scared the hell out of me. And I've been pursuing answers to that ever since. I interview people weekly. People are sending me messages, especially from right here in West Virginia. Hey, I saw this, or I heard this, something hit my house, I saw this large monkey looking creature run off with one of my chickens, all kinds of stories. And these, you can't just say all these people are nuts because we're talking about police officers. We're talking about doctors, lawyers. You have to take these accounts seriously because they're coming from many, many credible people. There's something to the Bigfoot phenomena. I don't know if it's an extraterrestrial, a living, breathing flesh creature. I don't know if it's the missing link between, man and ape. I don't know. All I know is what I saw that day was real, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people over the years that have seen something very, very similar to what I've seen. So, it's...
It is very interesting and hard to say what exactly it is. Sorry, I thought you had quit. I think your mic had cut out.
It's fascinating, Yeah, the connection's not very good here. Sorry about that. But can you hear me now? But yeah, the thing is with Bigfoot, and people often ask me, well, what do you think these things are? And I tell them just like I told you, I don't know, but you got to take into account that they find new species on this planet on a daily basis. Just until recently, the giant squid was a myth. Until they captured live specimens, even on camera to this day. They just found a brand new species of orangutan this past year in Sumatra that they never knew existed. The mountain gorilla was only discovered 50 years ago, and they're constantly finding new species, even on our planet, almost daily. The oceans are 90%, 80 to 90% unexplored. It's hard to tell what we have living down there, So, if you take all that into account, and, I believe that whatever these Bigfoots are, that there's a very small amount of them, very small numbers, but they could literally be hiding, where I live, they could be hiding 20 feet away from you and you would never know they were there because I'm surrounded by millions of acres of woods. And, people got their heads buried in their cell phones. They're not paying attention to their surroundings, and a person could hide 20 yards, around your house and you would never know they're there. All they have to do is stand behind a tree, and if these creatures are highly intelligent, which we pretty much know they are, they're primarily nocturnal. Most people are in bed at night. They're not running around in the woods at night. So, it goes to show you that there could be unknown creatures walking all around you and you never ever would know it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it seems like these experiences happen when a person does go out in the woods and perhaps they encroach on the Bigfoot's territory. For us, we do security as well, and we had a gig up in Rico, Colorado, and one night there were large rocks being thrown down the side of the mountain, and we knew it wasn't a bear or anything because the difference between rocks and gravel sliding off the side of the mountain and something actually being thrown. And I guess
bears
don't throw rocks. And so nobody had really been up in this area. It was an old abandoned mine, but they were going up there to clean it up, get all the chemicals and stuff out of it so as not to have it leak out into the water as far as the river or stream that goes right next to it. And so this Bigfoot was not used to anyone being up there at night, and like you're saying, they're nocturnal, so it was getting pissed off that we were even up there. And I went up there with my team to the Grand Imperial and did a paranormal investigation up there. They're like, what do you want to do tomorrow? Well, I want to head up the mountain and see if I can find any evidence, and I did find some tracks. And then we went back down for lunch, and there was a mother and daughter, and they were talking about their experience. And on the other side of the valley there, in a clearing of aspen trees, they're sitting there having their coffee in the morning and looking up at the side of the mountain, and all of a sudden they saw not only a Bigfoot but an albino Bigfoot, and it was so big, like it only took it a handful of steps to get across this clearing. So it's pretty interesting that they were seeing it over there and we were witnessing it or experiencing up on the other side. So it makes you wonder, are there multiples, or is this the same one, or perhaps a family of Bigfoot? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you can't deny that the Native American tales of these creatures go back thousands of years. I mean, there's, petroglyphs, drawings of these creatures. Their folklore and their history is passed down orally from generation to generation. And, some tribes, especially in the Pacific Northwest, talk of how they had their own area and we had our own area. You didn't go over there. And those traditions are still being passed down to this day by Native American tribes.
And there's a lot of tales and lore, and like you said, petroglyphs and such about it. And not only that, but aliens and UFOs. And I know one of your books or some of your studies are on ufology. Have you had any alien or UFO experience, or is this part of your studies? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I grew up I'm from West Virginia originally. All my family's from West Virginia, and my stepdad was actually in the Air Force. So I grew up out in New Mexico, and I was around, the Air Force bases my whole life, and I actually went into the Air Force myself. So I spent a lot of time walking around every known craft we have, to include, stealth bombers, the most top secret stuff we have. And I've seen stuff in the sky that I know for a fact a human pilot could not survive the G forces that some of these things are pulling, unless we have some kind of unreal technology that's never been made public. Which is possible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's little green men flying around in spaceships. It's a possibility. However, I believe that things that I've seen, and after talking to many other people in the field and eyewitnesses, that we've been being visited probably for thousands of years by a very advanced multiple, most likely advanced beings. Whether we're some kind of crazy DNA experiment or something that we were put here by these beings, I don't know, but there's definitely a lot. I mean, there's too much evidence. I mean, you're going back to, ancient times that there's drawings of spaceships in the sky, on the rocks, in paintings. Too many witnesses have seen, they drew what they saw, and they only, there's talk of these flying flaming chariots having this battle in the sky, throwing, it's everywhere. I mean, it's too in your face to just say, no, there's no such thing as that. It's the evidence for the alien phenomena or the extraterrestrial phenomena is way, way more than, say, a Bigfoot. If you compare the two, there's way more evidence to suggest we've been visited by extraterrestrials in the past and even now today. If you really, you've got astronauts that have talked about it. You've got all these high-ranking government people that have come out, and just millions of witnesses around the world. If you really sit there and you use common sense, there's definitely something going on. And just, recently, in recent times, you've got NASA just, coming out publicly saying, we're finding hundreds of planets in the so-called Goldilocks zone, near star planets that, are in that golden zone, as they call it, that could support life and have water, that are very similar Earth-like planets. So, the universe is a vast, vast place, and the numbers are so high. You got all these famous mathematicians talking about it, that, there's literally billions. The possibility is that there's billions of Earth-like planets in the universe that could support intelligent life. So, if you use common sense, I mean, it's right there. It smacks you right in the face. And I interviewed numerous witnesses. Books that's coming out probably very soon in the near future will be a whole book on just West Virginia UFOs. It's called Real West Virginia UFOs, Sightings and Encounters. And I've got tons and tons of examples of people claiming to have been abducted, seeing lights in the sky, just hundreds and hundreds. And then there's a whole bunch more to the book that shows the specific West Virginia connection to SETI and all kinds of other things. One of the, this West Virginia was considered the most active place in the world for UFO sightings at one time. And many, many crazy things have happened here. We've got three of the biggest UFO stories in modern times right here in the Mountain State. So it's all compiled into this book, and it's going to be a really fascinating read for folks.
I know, and I'm so interested. I want to be like, what are some of these stories? But I know it's in your book, and you don't want to spoil it. But not being from West Virginia, I don't know a lot about what goes on out there, so I'm curious.
Well, I mean, the prime examples are, we had the famous Flatwoods Monster incident in 1952 that numerous eyewitnesses saw strange craft intelligently controlled, making turns and coming down, where they saw a 10-foot tall being, and it made worldwide news. There was a government cover up, and it was kind of swept under the rug for many, many years. And a guy named Seth Breedlove came out with the movie, documentary style movie called Small, the movie I was in, and Flatwoods Monster: A Legacy of Fear. And it's a documentary, with the last two living eyewitnesses and other folks, that plainly show, what went on. And it wasn't just a one-time incident. This thing went on. This was a multiple day occurrence. There was military involved and a whole lot more. And then in the 60s, you had the whole Woody Derenberger incident and the Indrid Cold incident, where he, supposedly was driving home from work and a craft came down, and he had this whole conversation with this character called Indrid Cold, who was a ET from a planet called Lanulos, and he actually wrote a book about it, and he had all these encounters for years with this ET, and he even claimed to have gone to the planet on his ship several times. But right after that was during the whole Mothman series of sightings, and where hundreds and hundreds of people saw strange lights and strange craft all over the Point Pleasant and Ohio area there by the Ohio River during this whole wave of stuff that was going down. And, after the Flatwoods Monster incident, you had the whole connection to SETI was actually the search for extraterrestrial life was actually founded by Frank Drake and Carl Sagan right here in West Virginia. So, there's a whole lot to it. I just give you a little teaser there, and, the book's going to be a cool book to show you just what all goes on in West Virginia to this very day.
That's awesome. And I grew up, my mom being the spiritual side of me, and she was able to see and communicate with spirits, and my dad hadn't never had a paranormal experience until he was with her, and that's when he had seen his first ghost. But he was the side of my family that was really into the UFOs and aliens, and so I'd listen to his stories and always wanted to believe, but sometimes it takes that little bit of proof or whatnot for one to believe. And I really didn't have any experiences until 2012 when I'm pregnant with my son and my two daughters are riding with me from the motorcycle rally, and my daughters are like, "Mom, what is that? What's following us?" And I'm looking in the rearview mirrors and I'm not seeing anything. And I was like, "I don't see anything." And they said, "Mom, up in the sky, there's something following us. It looks like a ball of fire." And so as soon as I got to Highway 160B, I stopped the stop sign there on Rainbow Road, got out and looked up, and immediately Nova's freaking out. She just wants to go home, but I want to see what they're talking about. And there was a small ball, and it looked small because it was fairly high up in the sky, and it looked like it had liquid fire flowing through it, and the kids are begging to just go home, so I take them home, and that's the last that we saw of that until I think my son was about a month old, and I'm holding him, and Dylan Redwine had gone missing, and it's all snowy out in the horse pasture in the backyard, and I'm just looking out there with the full moon and thinking, I hope he's safe, and wherever he's hidden out, because his dad had been known to hide him out a few times, I hope he's warm and safe and okay. And then all of a sudden I see another orb. I think it's an alien orb, and it's coming down the back fence of my property, and it looks as if it's 3 or 4 foot in diameter, in some sort of, it looks like a glass globe, but it could be some sort of something else, with liquid fire going through it in a clockwise fashion, red, orange, and yellow colors, just like a burning fire, but liquid. And it just went at a slow walking pace down the back fence. And then, I guess a year or so later, I've always been obsessed with the moon since my mom passed away when I was 5, almost 6. And looking at the sky, getting different skyscapes and pictures, and I'm taking these pictures because the moon is putting out this electric blue light onto the clouds, and it was very beautiful. And as I'm scanning through my pictures, I see these little shuttlecraft all throughout the sky, and so I go out and take more pictures, and I'm capturing more. And one of the earliest pictures during that night was a ring of lights, different colors, and it looked like, I like to call it the conference on the cloud. It looked like a ring of UFOs doing, having some sort of conference or sharing information or whatnot, but throughout the night, wherever they were in the same formation and in the same position, whether they're pointing up, down, to the side, left or right. And then at the end of the night, it was back to just little balls of light, and then they were gone. So that was pretty amazing, and I have no doubt that there are actually UFOs out there. And I also work overnight security, and my 2 youngest, one is 4 and one is 7, they sit there before they go to bed and tell me about their dreams they had the night before, so on and so forth. And Lily starts telling me about this dream she had that her and her brother were going on to a UFO in the backyard right behind our room. And all of a sudden Floyd jumps out of the craft, so Lily jumped out and followed, and they were running, and then Floyd said, "And then you tripped," and Lily argued back with him, "No, you tripped." And then they finally realized who tripped, and then she started laughing, and she said, "Remember when you jumped on the alien's head?" And they both started chuckling and laughing, and that's when I realized it wasn't a dream, it was a shared experience that they had had that seemed like a dream because it was just so out of this world, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, you just never know. I mean, you never know what's going on with these things, and for all we know, we've all been. We just have no memory of it and never know.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people don't remember unless they get a regression done. Some people tend to remember after a certain amount of time, or sometimes the little mind swipe doesn't work. It's pretty interesting, and it's hard to say what really is going on there, but I don't know. I don't remember
Yeah.
being abducted.
And in my opinion, a lot of this stuff is interconnected in some way. So, I mean, you just never know. I mean, that's why we do what we do, and we're trying to find a little piece of that puzzle, and maybe it'll open up a whole, plethora of different things just by us going out, and other people going out and searching for answers.
So, what is some of the most amazing evidence that you have gathered in the field of the paranormal?
Well, I mean, I've pretty much captured a lot of it. I mean, I've captured full blown shadow figures on video, on still pictures, you know, countless EVPs, objects moving on their own, um, just, you name it, doing it for this many years. I mean, I mean, it's pretty nuts. Some of the stuff we've captured and I've captured and experienced, and I've been attacked by things unseen, left marks on my body. Uh, you name it. It's just, it's been unnerving at times to realize that something that you can't see physically or touch physically can actually hurt you, physically in some way by scratching you or whatnot. Um, people I've worked with have been affected spiritually, mentally, and physically to the point where they had to quit investigating because it became too detrimental to their own health. So, it's not always a fun and games thing. It can be dangerous. We don't ever know what all we're dealing with when we do this stuff. So, and then you hear these crazy conspiracy stories from other people. I mean, I don't mean to call them crazy, but you just hear these stories that are so intense where people have been threatened by government officials, agents, whatever you want to call them, to stop doing things because they're getting too close to something, and many people that have done this stuff or come out publicly and talked about certain things, they've ended up dead in mysterious accidents, quotation marks, so it's just, you never know what's going to go down.
Is there any certain thing that you do or carry with you as a form of protection?
Sorry about that. Well, like I said, every investigation is different, you know, um, if it's it's all based off of your personal belief system, especially when it comes to these hauntings. Of course, when I'm in the woods, I always have a firearm. I mean, that's just me. I've grown up in the woods my whole life, and you would almost be a fool to not carry one for obvious reasons. And then in the haunting aspect, I often have holy water. I use prayers and whatnot to protect myself, but that doesn't always work. Sometimes these things do affect you. And then with anything else, it's just the same thing. I protect myself with what I feel comfortable with. So to each his own in that manner.
Yeah, it really does have to come down to faith or what you believe in, what you have faith in to protect you. It's kind of like a mind over matter or a sort of a form of protection. You have to have belief in it or it won't really work for you. But like you said, sometimes no matter what you do get attacked or sometimes you let your guard down and things happen. What kind of attacks have you received in the field?
Well, I know I've had attachments before. This one case, I actually lived in it for over a month and went back 3 more times for weeks at a time, living in it 24/7 and investigating it. And after that whole deal was over, I had like the worst year of my life. I was almost financially ruined. I had health problems beginning to spring up, and that's when I found out I had cancer in my leg, and just a whole bunch of crazy stuff happened. And then I went and got cleansed by 3 different clergy, a shaman, a Baptist minister, and a Catholic priest. And it was almost like a light switch went on and everything turned around overnight. So I knew right then and there that there was, I had sword, and I had gotten rid of it. And then it was just like wham, everything just did a complete 360 almost overnight, and things began to get better really quickly, and a major turnaround happened. So, sometimes we don't recognize that that's a possibility. These spirits can affect you in all aspects of your life, and you have to be aware of that. If you're not, it can really be detrimental to you, in many different ways. They look for cracks, any kind of cracks that's going on in your personal life, whether you may have an alcohol problem or drug problem, or you're having family problems that, these things seek to destroy souls if they're a very negative type entity, and they exploit those cracks in whether you have, in your psyche, in your spiritual beliefs, or in your physical body. That's what they do. And unless you experience something like that, it's very hard to believe. I don't try to change people's mind on religion or politics or anything like that. That's not my job. All I do is share my experiences, and you can take it for what it's worth, and believe what you want to believe. But I'm here to tell you, it can happen, and it does happen.
Yeah, and it's pretty scary when it does, and surprising because, like you said, you can't touch this being, but it can touch and harm you. So that seems kind of unfair, but when it does happen, it kind of, I don't know, is so surprising, and just the effect. I know I was scratched once, and I felt like I had taken something a short time after I received the scratches, and it made me feel really weird, but I did spray holy water on it, and luckily it was only 2 scratches. I think the 3rd scratch got caught on my pants, but not even 5 minutes after I had sprayed the holy water on it, the scratches were gone. And then a couple days later it happened again, and this time it was 3 scratches. Sprayed the holy water on it again, and it took a lot longer for it to go away this time. And then having my guard down sometimes, going into a job and not protecting myself the way I generally would, because I'm not picking anything up off of this place, and kind of taking shortcuts, which I've learned not to do. But then later on that night, having something kind of jump in my body and take a ride. Have you ever had anything take you over, or I think they call them walk-ins, or possess you for a short time?
No, I've seen that happen numerous times over my years of doing this to other people, but I've never, I know I had the attachment, but it didn't control me. It was just affecting me negatively, and but I have seen that happen to people. And for whatever reason, I think they've tried, to do that, but for whatever reason, my psyche or whatever was telling me, it's time to get out of there or whatever. So, you just never know. After you do this, after you do this stuff for so many years, you can literally walk into a place and you can feel the energy. You can feel if it's heavy, if it's sad, if it's really negative in nature, or even happy on some occasions. And I've seen it affect many people. That energy just bleeds off right onto some people, and it takes them over. And it's a pretty scary sight. I've actually recorded possessions of people. I've seen other videos of people being possessed where their body contorts in inhumanly impossible ways to a body would contort without breaking bones. It's unbelievable when you see this stuff happen. People with superhuman strength that it takes 5, 6 grown men to hold them down. That's supernatural. That's not, a lot of that is supernatural, folks. It's not just something that happens on a whim. Something is taking control of people, and I've seen it happen many times.
When you guys do go out on investigation, do you ever take somebody with you in case something like this happens, or do you have someone on call to show up really quick to do a blessing or whatever?
I don't have, I don't have a team. I go out solo. I work with other people. If I need, if I need to put a team together, I have certain individuals I reach out to, and then we go, we'll go do something. But on certain cases, I will take a clergy member with me, or whoever it needs to be, and that each particular case is different, as we talked about earlier. It's what I feel at the moment. If that doesn't work, then I reach out and get someone else up there. It's just, you got to see what you got and deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, and it's funny how that happens, because generally, just driving by a place or pulling up to a place, I'll get the feelings off of it. And in this particular case, a woman was about to have a baby, and she wanted to get rid of whatever was in her house, which is right in the backyard of a Catholic church. I went in there, showed her the parts of her kit, and showed her how to use it, get in every nook and cranny, have the window cracked open for whatever it is to get out. And so I'm in smoke the whole time, and I'm thinking, I'm fine. I've got enough sage all around me, but it's all in intent and purpose. And I learned not to cut corners anymore after that particular investigation, and I also learned not to go on my own. But yeah, it is pretty scary how different things like this can happen. It's just kind of out of this world and hard to wrap one's mind around, but it is very real, and it does happen, and it can be very scary. And like you said,
another thing, doing residential cases is not, it's not like, you don't just walk into a house and, you're not on TV, you're not, and people who do this to get on TV are, you're in it, you're not, you have no business doing this. Honestly, it's not like you see on TV, not at all. TV is for entertainment. You got to remember that. It's 99% of the time, most of the people on there are actors portraying people like me and so many others out there that do this for real. Most of the evidence, not, I can't say all the evidence is fake, because I believe sometimes they do get some decent stuff. It's dropping $50,000 a week on a production for a TV show. If they don't get anything, they're going to make something happen, because they have to get ratings. It's all garnered by money. They're not going to drop all this money on a season of a ghost show and not get any, real evidence. They're going to manufacture evidence. You got to remember, it's a double-edged sword. TV is TV, folks. It's not the real paranormal. It's not real investigating. It's for entertainment purposes. Now, some of the other shows that have real people on there telling their experiences and their stories, yeah, those are legit. Take those for what they are. But the reality ghost hunting shows are 99% acting. Okay, that's just the reality of it. It's great for the paranormal in some ways, but it's also horrible for the paranormal in other ways. It just is. I tell it like it is. I always have. I've turned down numerous shows over the years because I told them I don't fake evidence, or that, they won't call you back because they want you for this show, but they say, hey, look, we got to make, if we don't get evidence, we have to have something because blah, blah, blah. That's just the nature of the game. They're spending millions of bucks or tens of thousands of bucks on these productions, and, they're going to make something happen if they don't get anything real. That's just the nature of the game. They go to a place for a couple of days, film, they don't get something, guess what? Stuff's going to happen regardless.
Right.
Because I've done tons and tons of investigations over the years where I haven't got anything, but they don't, they're not going to show that on TV because they got to have those ratings. They got to make their money.
It's all about the almighty dollar. But on that note, we are going to go on break. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Hey, welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have Dave Spinks on. Dave, welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, so we had left off on attacks and such like that. Man, where do we go from here? I'm kind of stuck on that because just the other night we had another episode here, and my husband had gone to pick up our niece from the hospital, and she came to stay with us, and I guess he saw an entity that has kind of followed him throughout the years. And so as soon as he got home, he's like, hey, has anything weird been going on here? Well, Lily was, and she's the 4-year-old, she's been coming out with all kinds of crazy stuff that night, and one of the things being that there was a shadow type figure going back and forth across the hallway. She was also educating her 19-year-old and 15-year-old sisters on their third eye and how to open it. But as soon as he got home, he had asked if anything was going on here. And I said yes, and he's like, well, come outside. I want to talk to you about something. And it was really weird because as soon as I hit the gate, all sorts of angry thoughts and voices were going on in my head, and he's talking to me, but I can't hear what he's saying. And then all of a sudden, all of these things are different, not nice things coming out of my mouth, and I'm trying to stop what I'm saying, but I can't. But at least this time, as opposed to the other time, I can realize what's going on, and I'm actually still present in my body. And so I just start to walk away, and as I'm walking away, I keep saying things to him, but I'm trying to separate myself from him because I realize what's going on, and I can't stop it. So that was pretty strange, being that we didn't go out looking for it. It kind of showed up here and had that going on, but I don't know. It's weird how things happen or how things find you. Do you find that even though you don't go out on an investigation or anything, you're somewhat of a magnet and things come to you, or do you more find them out on experiences and jobs?
Well, I mean, I have had things follow me to where I live, just like when I, had that attachment that time from that case, that house that we stayed in and everything. I think, and I also think people that, may have had at least one near death experience, NDEs, may be more prone to spirits or entities, coming around them because they've been so close to the other side, or maybe have even crossed over and came back. I think that could play a key factor, or possibly even, like, some of us are more in tune with our psychic abilities, if you will, for lack of a better term, or I think spirits know when you are willing to communicate. They know this, and they will come and try to communicate with you more than say someone that has never had an experience in these types of things happening. I think some of us, are just more likely to have these sort of experiences than others, for whatever reason. I don't know, but that's just, some examples of possibilities of why some people seem to have more experiences than others, or, some people don't have claimed. Many people I've talked to never had any sort of paranormal experiences that they can say that, they feel it was a spirit that they saw, or a ghost, or whatever terminology you want to use. But then I'll question them, and I'll say, well, have you ever seen something out of the corner of your eye, or felt like something was standing behind you watching you, and that, you get that overwhelming sensation, the hair on the back of your neck stands up for no reason, and you feel like you're being watched. I said, that's what they do. They very rarely come at you face on, head on. It's always out of the corner of your eye or from behind you. At least in my experiences, very rarely will you see something directly in front of you. It's always like out of your peripheral, and they move a lot faster than we do. They're on a different plane of existence. They dart around and they shoot around, and it's just, it's crazy stuff. It really is. And then, when you've done this for so many years, you become more in tune to it. You know when to you recognize it more so than the average person that's never had a so-called experience. And um, like I said earlier in the show, you talk about, you can walk into a place and you can feel that energy, whether it's happy, sad, mad, glad, whatever. You pick up on it right away. The hair on the back of your neck stands up, the hair on your arms. Your body is in tune with it, so to speak. So it fascinates me. I still get it overwhelms me when I'm in a location. I know I'm the only person in there, or it's like me and another guy, and we ask a question and we got a female voice responding to us on a digital recorder or tape recorder or whatever. That blows my mind, because how can you explain that? You can't. What is that? And it's actually responding to your question. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, and when it is residual, it's like, okay, that's just the energy recorded, into this wood or into this granite or whatever else is in the area, and it just kind of replays, and it's not intelligent. But when you do get that intelligent spirit, it's just like, I don't know, it gives me hope for when I do pass, because it's not just darkness and being eaten up underground or whatever.
Yeah.
You actually have, I don't know, according to my mom on the other side, she said she's able to go where she wants, when she wants, and it kind of makes sense to me, because I do believe in Judgment Day, but I think of it as a day, not a day for everyone individually, but one day where we all go and do the process. So it's interesting that they are there and that they're hanging out because they love the place, or they have unfinished business, or they feel like they would like to watch over their family. It's very interesting that we do have that free agency to continue on and do that.
Right. It's fascinating stuff. And nobody has all the answers. There's no experts in this. It's just experience, your experience level basically. And, because we don't know exactly what we're communicating with a lot of times, sometimes, and sometimes some of these negative entities, they like to portray themselves as children, to gain your trust. And then whammo, next thing you know, you have an attachment of some sort, or worse. So you have to be, it's not all fun and games in this. It can be dangerous. I can't stress that enough. I talk about that on numerous shows. People think they can watch a TV show and then they go to people's homes and tell them they got a freaking demon in there. And that's just not the case. They're scaring the living hell out of people, and people are selling their homes, moving out, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Or they go in there and mess it up so bad that somebody that does know what they're doing can't fix it. If you're a novice investigator and you want to be in the paranormal, that's fine. But get with a team, or get with someone who knows what they're doing, has a lot of experience, who's well respected, and try to work with them. If they have the time to mentor you and teach you, there's certain ways to do things and certain ways you don't do things. And there's no right or wrong answer. However, don't go into someone's house, and tell them they've got a demon when you have no clue what you're talking about. That just makes a whole bigger mess.
Yeah, because it puts that fear into them, and it's really not a demon, it's something else. But yeah, it's not good. And like you said, it's not a game. This is very serious business. And the way that we weed people out from Four Corners Paranormal Investigations is we'll have a monthly meeting where we educate ourselves on different ways of protection and grounding and just different entities, so on and so forth. And the people that are just here to go out and have fun and think of it as a game or a fun hobby or whatnot, they won't come to the meetings, but those of us that take it very seriously do. And so that's where we get our core group and our secondary group, which we do private investigations with our core group only.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you're, I call those folks paranormal enthusiasts, okay? And that's fine. If you have an interest and you want to go to a place, go to some of these public places that do public investigations, like, like old insane asylums and old prisons that you can go around with 40, 50 people and see if you have an experience. That's fine and dandy. But do not go into people's homes and tell them they got, this and this going on when you have no clue what you're doing. That's just a whole nother, and each investigation is different, so you don't want to go in there and do that. If you want to if you go on the weekends and you don't live this life for real, go to some of the public places and do a public ghost hunt. That's fine and dandy, enjoy, have an experience, whatever. But when it comes to people's homes and where they're living and they're having a paranormal phenomena go on, just stay away from it. Stay away from it, because you're not helping this family, you're hurting them. So, stay out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And it is important to have that respect, not even for, or just for the individual in the house, but also for the spirit there, or whatever the entity may be. You have a certain amount of respect in this field. And I don't know, I watch these shows and my kids enjoy watching them. And when they start to antagonize spirits or ghosts, it's pretty upsetting to me. And I heard one girl say this last week that, well, if nothing's happening, then I do this, or I'll threaten them, like, I'm going to burn it down or whatever else. Like, to me, that's just ridiculous and disrespectful.
Well, this is my opinion, each investigation and location is different. I'll give you some examples. Okay. I'm ex-law enforcement. Okay. I go into an old prison. Immediately, they're not going to like me because I'm a cop, right? So they're going to try to intimidate me. They're going to try to test me. And the way I handle that is I'm going to give it right back to them, because that's how I would talk to them in real life. Okay. It's not like I'm being disrespectful, but I'm letting them know that you're not going to intimidate me. You're a piece of shit, whatever. You're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to threaten me, and I'm not going to take it. So I'm going to give it right back to them. Now, I'm not going to go into an orphanage, where children were, possibly tortured and treated really bad, whatever the case may be, and go in there and start talking like that. Each location is different. Each place is different. And you treat it as if you would if they were living. That's the best advice I can give you on that. So, I've been attacked and other things in some of these places that were run by the mob, and different prisons and jails and different things like that. And you have to stand your ground and give it back to them, just like they're trying to give it to you. So it's not about being disrespectful, but it's like I said, each situation is different. You have to gauge that, and you have to know what's going on there, and just like someone's home, if there's a negative entity in there and it's traumatizing kids or the people that live there, yeah, I might use a little more forceful, talking tactics, so to speak. It's not about being disrespectful or whatnot. It's more about letting the entity or the spirit know that that's not going to be tolerated. You're not going to put up with that, and they got to go, or whatever the case may be. So you have, it's a whole, it's just a whole different thing with each location. So you got to go in, try to recognize what's going on, what's in there, and the who, what, where, when, and why, and what you got to do to get rid of it. So you got to take it with a grain of salt on each investigation and move forward.
Yeah, and use your common sense.
Yeah.
And on this gangster investigation that you did, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, you got to know where you're at. Like if I, you can imagine me as retired law enforcement going into an old jail, what I've had to deal with and experience in some of these places. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to really be on your game and, be ready to go, because it gets really nasty at times. So.
On your gangster investigation, didn't you get physically attacked?
Yeah, the one in Indiana, me and my buddy Weatherly were there, and actually had my head cracked open by something. This entity or spirit, whatever it was, calling itself Ian, obviously did not like, there was references coming across the ghost boxes saying pig and cop and kill you and all this kind of stuff. And lo and behold, something whacked me on the head with and he said it was whether we asked him, what'd you do to David, said I hit him. And he said, what'd you hit him with? And he said, a shovel, and I had a big knot on my head and a cut and I was bleeding. How do you explain that? I mean, the whole thing was on camera the whole time, you know? So when you realize these negative spirits or entities are that powerful where they can physically hurt you, I mean, that's pretty unnerving. And you have to be ready to combat that. The very next day, he was scratched violently on his back to the point where it was about to bleed, and he became physically ill. By the same spirit, same voice came across the box, said it was going to slice him. And a few minutes later, he had these crazy marks down his whole entire back, and it caused him to become physically ill. So, these things can happen. They do happen, and it can be very unpleasant at times.
Yeah, and it is amazing the physical reaction that your body does have when something like that happens. Like you said, he got sick. And I can remember feeling that way on a certain investigation and going out and checking on a member of our crew who had gone out to grab some sage and sweetgrass and stuff, and she was out there for an extended amount of time, so I went out to check on her. I was worried, and she was hiding in the car because she said something really tall and dark had run towards her aggressively, so she jumped in the car and she was afraid to get out. And they started to... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, they try to intimidate you. They'll try to scare you. Whatever they can do to just pretty much say, "Hey, I'm the boss," and you got to stand up to it. And not take it.
Yeah, for sure. You got to stand your ground and have faith in yourself. But they started to sage her, and at that moment, I started to feel sick, like just being around it, and I don't know, I felt like I had some sort of attachment or something going on that was affecting me. But it's amazing how it can physically affect you. It can confuse you. Sometimes you'll find people just sitting there and they can't even talk to you. So many different things that can happen. And
the spirits will actually, sometimes they will project onto you what they're feeling, like their sadness or their hate or their madness, or even injuries that they sustained when they were killed. I mean, I've seen that happen as well. And I think that's happened to me a few times where, somebody was maybe a soldier was shot in the gut, and I had these horrendous stomach pains like you could not imagine, where it put me on the ground. They will project that onto you to show you what happened to them, and you got to kind of recognize, hey, this is what's going on. They're not attacking me, but they're showing me the pain they felt or what happened to them at the time of their death, something to that effect. And it's pretty crazy, some of the stuff I've seen people go through, and even myself, when these things happen. For all I know, that guy that cracked me on the head, that spirit or entity calling himself Ian, maybe he was a killer and he killed cops. I don't know. Or he cracked somebody on the head with a shovel, just like he said, and he was showing me what he did. I don't know. But I know it definitely affected me physically, and to the point where I bled. I mean, it was all on camera. Numerous people seen it, blood on my hand. I've got pictures of it. I mean, it was crazy.
And was there a shovel physically there, or this is just a shovel that he had in his possession as a spirit?
It just said, he asked him what you hit him with, and it was a shovel. Now, there was a freaking a pickaxe in one of the rooms too. So, and we were hearing a weird tinking sound, like somebody might have been digging with a pickaxe, with our own ears. We had heard that the first night we were in the place, and we traced it to that room, and sure enough, there's a pickaxe sitting in the room. And we're like, holy crap. And we were like, man, that's what a pickaxe sounds like when someone's digging with it and hitting rock, tink, 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 it was crazy.
It is very crazy. And it's funny how, like you said, they will come through with emotion or what they're feeling or what they went through, because it is so hard to manifest and so hard to communicate through EVP. A lot of times it comes through as a whisper. Sometimes you can hear it really good. Sometimes you can barely hear it at all, but it's there. You just can't understand what it's saying. So to be able to communicate that way is pretty interesting.
And sometimes if you get scratched or whatever, it's not always negative. Picture this, you're a spirit. They can see us, but we can't see them. And that frustrates them and they want to get your attention. Hey, why am I talking to you? Why am I screaming at you and you can't hear me? So somehow they're able to reach out and scratch you physically, trying to get your attention. It's not always necessarily negative when they scratch you, but, or touch you. It's a lot of times you'll feel, something touch you or pull. A lot of women talk about their hair being pulled or something grabbed them. Maybe maybe it was the dude or was some kind of pervert when he was a living, and he still is. So he likes to grab women's butts or something. I mean, it's just all. It's relevant. You got to try to make it relevant to someone who is living. And sometimes these spirits don't even know they're dead. They think they're still living. They don't understand why they can see us, but we can't see them. And they're trying to interact with us, and we're not. You're just walking by, ignoring them, basically, because you can't see them or hear them. So they're doing whatever they can to get your attention.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that movie I saw once where they thought the living were actually ghosts when they were actually the ghosts, and it makes you wonder, and it gives you kind of a different perspective, and maybe from their side of what they go through.
Yep, you got to think outside the box, put yourself in that, think of different scenarios and ways that, well, wow, yeah, that makes sense. They're trying, how frustrating would that be if you're standing there in a room of people and you can see them, but they're just walking by you like, and you're trying to talk to them, or whatever. And they're not, like, you're not even there. And they, like I said, they must not know they're dead, So that would be super frustrating.
Indeed. So can you tell me, or can you tell us about some more of your investigations that had some pretty epic happenings going on?
Well, there's been so many, over the years. I mean, gosh, let me think here. I'll tell you one, this place that's no longer open for investigations was this place called Revenant Acres in Indiana, and little tiny farmhouse, and the guys that used to run it they were still active cop. One of them was a sheriff's deputy, and he was telling us that was a notorious drug house for many years, and it had one bedroom upstairs. It was all painted black, and it was just a bizarre little house, and speculations of women being like held there against their will for, some kind of sex trade or whatever. But anyway, long story short, me and my buddy Weatherly were out on one of our, 2-3 week long investigation tours where we hit multiple locations, and we were in this place and we were trying an experiment where I was in one room and he was in another room, and one of us would ask questions while the other one would try to listen for the response on a recorder or a ghost box, just trying different techniques. And we were getting some good responses when I heard this horrible crash, and he had been sitting on a piano bench in the downstairs room. And I ran in there and I said, "What happened?" And he's standing up there with a really confounded look on his face. And he's like, "It felt like someone just picked up the bench and tried to dump me off of it." And it was pretty bizarre. We couldn't figure it out. And we kept on with our investigation. Well, the next day he had flown home and he sent me these pictures. He said, "Dude, I got out of the shower." My wife said, "What the hell was that on my leg?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Well, he took pictures of it and sent it to me. On the inside of his thigh, there was a human bite mark. And his wife had seen it and he couldn't see it, because it was like down there where you'd have to completely bend over and look down between your legs almost. But something had left a human bite mark on his leg. And we figured back when that bench had flipped, that's what all went down. Something actually bit him and had enough force to like almost throw him off the bench, but he stood up quick enough where it didn't knock him over. So it's, pretty bizarre. And, to see that and realize that, something again here was able to physically, put a mark on your body that you could not see, and, and just numerous other experiences. I've seen some of the crazy stuff over the years. And another location that fascinates me is Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum here in West Virginia. That's one of the most craziest places I've ever been, because you can literally walk outside, and inside this place it'd be 96 degrees. There's no AC or nothing in this place, and you have to wear a jacket in there. It's so cold. From what I can only say is spirit activity. It's just freezing cold. Thousands of people have died at this place. I've walked through there many times before the current owners took over, doing EVP sessions and whatnot, and heard recordings of guys screaming, "Let me out of here!" And doors slamming. There's nobody in there. It's just crazy stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff happen there, where I captured a full-bodied shadow figure walk from left to right down the hallway when I knew it was only me and two other guys in there, and they were standing right behind me, and we didn't know we captured it until we reviewed the camera footage, and you can see everything, man. The arms swing, the legs move, the head, the shoulders, everything. It just walks from left to right, disappears right across the hallway, right in front of the 20 feet away from the camera. And at the same time, we were getting there was light anomalies going on down the hallway, and we were hearing a little girl's voice that kept saying, "Help, help," over and over again. It was the creepiest thing. And then when I reviewed my video footage, there a full-size, man-sized shadow figure walked across the hall, just like a person. It was crazy. So, when you see stuff like that and you experience it, it's just very like, wow. It's a wow moment. You feel like, wow, man, I really captured a really legit piece of paranormal evidence here.
Do any of those spirits try to communicate with you, or do you think that they're residual? Are they stuck? What do you feel like is going on there?
Well, obviously a residual haunt is something that does, it's not interacting with you. It's just something that you capture, whether it be on video or whatever. But intelligent haunting is, something you can interact with. You can ask questions, get it to turn on equipment, turn equipment on, whatever you're asking. But, those are the ones you can more or less communicate with, versus a residual haunt. You'll just, they don't interact with you. It's just the same thing that happens over and over again, a stain on the earth or the location forever, and it's never going to go away.
Do you feel like these spirits that feel trapped there, or like that's where they have to stay, is there any way for them to get out? Do you think that people who claim to be able to help people or spirits to the other side can actually do that?
I think it's a possibility. I don't really buy into that much. I think the intent, as long as if someone's there and they're really trying to, they have the proper good intent to try to help spirits cross over, hey, I'm all for it. Whether it actually works or not, I don't know. I can't say for sure. I've seen some pretty phenomenal things happen when people try to do that, and you see a bright burst of light, or you hear a response say thank you or something like that. That's pretty overwhelming.
I bet it can kind of choke you up and be pretty emotional when that happens. Just the feeling that radiates from that is amazing.
Yeah, it can be a powerful moment, when you feel like something good was done, whether it crossed them over or released them from whatever they're in, at that time. Like I said, in my opinion, some of these spirits don't even know they're dead. They're just going about their lives like they're still alive, and maybe there's something that you did or someone with you did that maybe made them become aware all of a sudden, and whammo, they go to where they're supposed to go. Who knows? But it's fascinating. That's why we do what we do.
Sorry, I had an incoming.
Yeah, I heard the door open. I was like, whoa.
I need some WD-40. Yeah, my kids are used to me doing the show later, and now that I'm earlier, they're like, whoa, what are you doing in here? But yeah, it's very interesting, the different things. We've been through one spirit in particular, and we actually got most of our information from a cell phone app, which a lot of people poo-poo it a lot and say these things don't work. But any piece of equipment that you get for paranormal investigation says for entertainment purposes only and is not scientifically proven, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like stabbing in the dark with any of these tools. But we used the Ghost Radar Legacy, and we had set up all of our equipment on this train car at the Durango and Silverton Museum Railroad in Durango, Colorado, and had gone out setting up other equipment throughout the museum. And when we came back, there was a whole list of words, and it started with her name. She said Kate Johnson, Walter Intention Death, Sharp Tool, etc., etc. And we gave the list to the museum curator, and we all did our homework, and come to find out her name was Kate Johnson. She was a soiled dove, aka prostitute, in the late 1800s. And she had fallen in love with this firefighter. He snuck her onto the train, and they were going to go elope and get married somewhere. And the brakeman, being that she was a working girl, had feelings for her too. So when he found the two of them together, a fight broke out, and the brakeman stabbed the firefighter to death. Kate tried to move away, and she moved to California to move on with her life, and she ended up taking her own life and somehow got stuck on the train car, perhaps because that was where the point of her demise started. But of all things and all people that went in there and were able to release her was a Catholic kids school class, and the museum curator told them the story, and as he was walking off the train car, he felt like they were walking behind him because the train car kind of goes back and forth when you walk on it. But they had stayed on there and said a prayer of release from purgatory. Well, Kate Johnson was Catholic, so due to her beliefs, she believed in purgatory, and this train car was basically it. So they said that, and he said, the museum curator said that he had grown up Catholic, but he had never heard this prayer. And for 3 months, she was gone. I had gone in there the week after that happened just to see how Kate and Emmy were doing, and the museum curator, and he said and told me what had happened and asked me to go back there and see if I felt her anymore, and she was gone. She was gone for about 3 months, but due to that free agency and free will, she came back to protect Emmy because the brakeman is there too, and we have some really awesome pictures of all three of those spirits.
That's cool. One thing I will caution you with the phone apps, if you don't know this, is that they all have geolocators on them. So if you're using those, be mindful that they know about these locations because they're pre-programmed and they have geolocators, and they can spit out words pertaining to that area. So you got to be very mindful of that. That way you can rule out any kind of, possibilities of some kind of weird connection and possible words that are being spit out by some of these apps, so to speak. I like to I don't use those just for that purpose only, because I don't like the fact, if you're standing in a graveyard and it's got a geolocator on, and guess what? It's probably going to spit out the word graveyard or something to that effect. So just be mindful of the ghost apps on cell phones.
Yeah, definitely. But it's funny how the information wouldn't have been from that train yard. She was actually from Alamosa, and the train was somewhere else at that point where all of this had happened. I think
right.
Alamosa.
But fallible, but just saying, just be mindful, because it doesn't matter if you recorded a ghost sitting down with you on camera and having a confirming everything you ever wanted to know in the paranormal world. There's still going to be skeptics, and they're going to use anything against you they can to debunk what you're doing. So just be mindful of that, and I think spirits can utilize just about anything they want to communicate with us, and that's my opinion. But, here again, you have people that will try to debunk everything you've ever done. I had one guy tell me that one guy commented on the video I was just talking about that, the shadow figure I caught. Oh, it's just shadows. You guys were walking in front of the IR lights. Well, I happen to know that we weren't walking in front of the IR lights. We were behind the camera the entire time. So, here's some guy has no clue, wasn't there, trying to debunk what you're putting up, and if I would have walked in front of the camera at that particular time, and I wouldn't even have used that evidence, So that's what you have to deal with. You can't change people's minds when it comes to paranormal and the politics. You might as well just forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw up what you got, and they can take it or leave it. But you're always going to have some naysayer or keyboard warrior, as I call them, that wants to try to one up you or debunk you or whatever. It's not even worth your time. Just, use the block and delete button and go on to the next and keep doing what you're doing, because that's just how the world is, especially nowadays with the internet and the keyboard warrior type people.
Yeah, they have that screen and that distance in between them and you, and so they feel like they can say anything, and yeah,
they don't
referred
even
to as trolls.
They didn't like that particular guy, that made a comment on my video of the shadow figure. He didn't even ask, did you guys walk in front of the camera or anything like that? He just went straight to, oh no, that's just your guys' shadow on the IR lights. Well, no, it wasn't, because we never walked in front of the camera, bud. You didn't even ask. Block and delete. See you later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're going to come at me like that, just come, if you want to be respectful, private message me and I'll tell you the whole scenario. But I'm not going to waste my time arguing with you, because that's what they want. These people want negative feedback. They want to argue. They want attention, whether it's negative or positive. They don't care. So it's not even worth your time. Just, if you want to present what you captured, present it, and don't even worry about any kind of bull crap going on.
Yeah, and like you're saying with the phone apps, like we've used that one since 2012, and that was the most epic thing that ever happened on there. Generally, you'll get words here or there, and it really doesn't make sense, but that one was just mind-blowing to me. But with any of this equipment, you gotta be careful. My favorite piece of equipment is myself, and that's what I like to go with, but it's nice to have different things to perhaps back up your experience or whatnot.
Yeah, you take all those devices, it's a toolbox, and the more things that you have that are getting interaction, with, the better it is to say, hey, we possibly have some legitimate paranormal activity going on here, because look, we were getting this. You good?
We just got a phone call from area code 360. Who are we talking to?
Hey, Tessa. This is Yvonne calling.
Aloha, Yvonne.
So this is your show now?
Yes.
All right. Well, were you asking for people to call in to share an experience?
Yeah, I was asking if you guys would like call in with your questions, your experiences, so on and so forth, because I love hearing from you guys.
Okay, and then who's your guest tonight? You have a guest this evening?
Yeah, Dave Spinks.
And what is he into? I mean, what is his show about?
Take it away, Dave.
I'm into everything. I've been investigating the paranormal for 30 years, over 30 years. I'm an author. I write books on topics, and I've been on scene on several TV shows, various documentary type shows, a couple of movies, more stuff coming out this year, this coming year, and I've pretty much done a little bit of everything.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I have an experience to share if you would like to hear it.
Definitely.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, well, this was very early. Oh, like in the, like 2005. No, it was even earlier than that. It was more like 2004, 2003 type thing. And, and I wasn't into all this, paranormal, but I was entering into a phase where strange things were happening. You know what I mean? I mean, I was having strange experiences, and I usually, sought, who would probably could help me, but I was kind of stuck because I didn't need a spiritual director. I needed somebody who understood paranormal. So I started calling, this psychic show, where you pay a person who's a psychic. And so I found one that who I felt was like real, her name was Venus. And, but anyway, I was talking with her and sharing, what was happening. And then all of a sudden, both she and I found ourselves in a different place. You know what I mean? We were like taken away. And we were in two different places. She's somewhere in Texas, and I'm, here in Washington. But both of us together were taken. And what I found was, we were standing before two beings. And at that time, I had, no knowledge about people having alien experiences. But I immediately recognized the small one as a gray, because I saw pictures of them. But the other being was like kind of tall, really tall, type thing. Over 6 feet type. And their appearance weren't solid. They were more like how kind of like translucent, kind of whitish color type thing. And they started communicating with both of us there, and basically they were asking that they wanted a healer on the other side. And my gift, and I do have the gift of healing, but I didn't think I was exceptional or anything. I'm just, because I worked in nursing for so long. And we said, I said, yes, I said, well, I guess so, and then after that, we were like back where we were previously on a telephone call. And I asked her, did you do that? And she says, no, Yvonne, you did, type thing. And I said, and did you get to, hear what they were saying? And they weren't speaking, they were telepathic. And she said, well, yeah, it was very clear. They want you to come over to the other side. And I didn't know what they meant by the other side, meaning is that, am I going to pass, and go over or what? But it was just to travel astrally or whatever, to go and heal aliens. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of like what I'm doing, so to speak. But it was like really shaking me because that was the first time something like that happened. But I was really happy that somebody was with me. But we were both shocked that it wasn't her, who's very gifted and very, developed in her gift. It was me who was just kind of budding, so to speak. But yeah, that kind of shook me for a bit. But then, as time passed, I became more used to because then I had other experiences. But, I never had that experience again, in terms of meeting, with two different kind of aliens. So anyway, that was my experience.
That's very, very interesting. What they meant by the other side is a lot of people theorize that these aliens are some sort of interdimensional travelers.
Right.
They might have meant that they want you to their dimension with them to heal someone or whatever the case may be. So that's pretty fascinating.
Well, yes. Yeah, I realize now that, time has passed and I've been doing the work, I do realize that I do travel. You know what I mean? I am going to other dimensions. in terms of what I'm seeing and stuff. But sometimes the entity, or I mean, the alien would come and visit me, here, usually at night, kind of thing, and I would interact, type thing, and I found that they have problems that are very similar to our own. It's not exceptional.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes
You
sense. I
know,
mean, mainstream science has now proven that there are other dimensions. So, it's
right?
not, it's out there, it's known, and it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. When I talk to other people who are more, akamai in terms of knowledge or understanding about such experiences, yeah, they related to me that I am going to different dimensions. And so I do have that capability of going to dimensions. It's not something I can do by will. I mean, I don't think about it and then zoom, I go off. It's more in terms of a task oriented. I'm either they come and check, visit me here, or I go someplace and, I'm interacting to,
Right.
they want to talk to me. And it's more kind of like guidance, basically, but I found out that these alien beings are just as fucked up as we are. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't
Oh,
mean to
no
say
worries.
that.
You can say whatever you
You
want.
know, but they're just like some of the things that human beings struggle with, issues. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
definitely. It's not without, it's definitely within the realms of things.
Yeah, and stuff. And so yeah, so that's kind of like story. I just wanted to share that. It made me realize that people, we have perceptions like the aliens are these really evolved beings. Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, they have, some of them have struggles, basically, like in terms of relationships or a past experience or something like that, just as much as we struggle with it.
Yeah, and being out
Oh
in
yeah.
space isn't really good for your body
Yeah.
either. We have our astronauts come back and they're weaker and smaller in frame and stature, even though they do work out
Yeah,
up there and stuff. It's just the difference because of the gravity or anti-gravity and so on and so forth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't had. I mean, I don't know what's the price. I mean, in terms of interdimensional traveling, but I mean, I don't. I have not experienced any untoward effects. You know, um, you know what I mean? Because because like with the Galactic Consortium, they would train you like how to go from point A to point B, so to speak. Like through a portal or by your thought. I mean, we can actually travel just by our thought process.
Oh yeah.
Disciplining our thinking. And so it's really interesting the interaction that you can have. In fact, I get more exhausted working with people than the actual work I do with these beings, that ask for help, kind of thing. I find working with human beings can be much more energy draining than working with the beings, because they seem open. You know what I mean? They don't have like, they're not stuck in a certain way of perceiving or opinionated as humans can be. We kind of like shut down, expanding our level of perception,
Well, that's
because of
right,
our own
because
defense
most
mechanism.
people that's because most people, we're brainwashed from an early age to think
Oh yeah,
one certain, and I think a lot of, over the years, the government has covered up a lot of things.
oh
And I
well,
think
but
also
yeah,
religion religion has been used to control the masses, and
yes.
scare the living hell out of them. And they
Well,
don't
I mean,
it
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
Well, I feel
people
like there's
inside
a
the box.
whole coordination of the powers that we have, looking at what they're doing to our food supplies, for one, the chlorination, the chemicals they put in our water, plus all the sedatives and antipsychotics and, it's like we're a drug culture too. And I feel that all this is a coordinated effort in terms of controlling the masses.
Well, on that note, we do have to go to break. You guys don't go anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
We'll be right back.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the third hour of Late Night in the Mountains. Tonight we're joined by Dave Spinks. Hey Dave, welcome back and thanks so much for being on the show tonight.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we were talking a little bit about the weather on the break, but yeah. I'm kind of going back to your military and police days because I've heard stories from different people who are on fire watch or whatnot in the military, and they see people when there's actually not people. It's like ghosts of people, perhaps. And for the police force, receiving phone calls from a house to 911, and then they arrive and nobody's there and nobody's been there for quite some time, and there's not even a phone on the premises. Did you have any activity like that when you were in the service and the police force?
I was. Yeah, I mean, you hear all these accounts, and there's some pretty eye-opening accounts from soldiers over in Afghanistan where they were seeing these ghost soldiers of the enemy out in front of them, and when they were digging their foxholes, they would find bones that were there from prior wars and whatnot, and all this strange occurrences were happening. They were seeing people in their night vision scopes, the radios were going off, and all kinds of crazy encounters you hear scuttlebutt about and whatnot. But I was in corrections. That was my job in law enforcement, and I did 2 years in a state, and then I went to the feds after that, and I retired. I just retired in 20 years, but I had one real eye-opening experience while I was a corrections officer that I wrote about in my new book, Real West Virginia Hauntings, and that's a series I'm doing about all the cases I've done in West Virginia over my 30 years. There's 55 counties in West Virginia, and I've done at least one paranormal investigation in every single one of those counties, and some counties more than others, but the series I'm doing, it talks about all those investigations. But one crazy experience I had in law enforcement was, obviously inmates are people when they die. They have sicknesses, oftentimes more so than regular people because many of them are drug addicts and that just is really bad for your health, So I had just returned from bringing an inmate back from a hospital run when I got a call on the radio, and they told me to get down to medical because I had another one that was going out with signs of a heart attack. So my job would be to go down there, dress them out. They got to get in the orange jumpsuit, and I got to have them cuffed to the bed, and I got to search them for any possible items they may have to help facilitate an escape, so they could pick the handcuffs or whatever. So as I'm doing this, I'm getting this guy ready, and we're waiting for the EMTs to come, and then one of us would ride in the ambulance while the other guy would follow behind in a patrol vehicle, And I'm getting this guy ready. I'm talking to him just like me and you, and he's got all the signs of a heart attack. He's pasty, he's sweating, and he, tell me that he had come up, a few days before to medical, and they thought he just had real bad heartburn, so they gave him crackers and some other stuff. Well, it turns out the guy had a heart attack, and now he was having another one. And so I got him all dressed out, got him ready to go, and my partner was, waiting outside for the ambulance. And as soon as the EMTs walk in the room, the guy just makes this god-awful grunt sound, and it's like he's flexing every muscle in his body, right? And he turns just the brightest shade of red you can imagine. And the EMT looks at me and mouths the words like, looks like he's faking or something like that, and I'm looking at the guy, and then he looks at me again, and the guy just kind of flops over on the gurney. He's like, oh, he's not faking, and he starts going, working on him and everything. So we rush him out of there. We're hauling butt to the hospital, trying to get this guy help, and we get in there and they work on him for like an hour, and nothing. He's gone. And so my job then is to sit in the room with him until my partner calls up to the facility and tells our investigator, the guy didn't make it, and then there has to be an investigation, and all this, stuff goes on. So while I'm sitting in the room with this guy, All the doctors had left and everything. They covered him up with a sheet. He was gone. Well, they leave one light on in the room, and it's the one behind the hospital bed. That fluorescent light are in like every hospital room that you've seen. And out of the corner, over in the corner there, I noticed this giant shadow looking thing standing there. It's like 10, 12 feet tall, and it's smoky, and it's kind of undulating. And I'm like, holy shit, there's somebody in the room with me. So I stand up and I got my hand on my gun and I'm reaching behind me trying to find a light switch, and this shadowy figure is kind of undulating and stuff. And I finally find the light switch and I flick it on, boom, nothing there. And I'm like, whoa, that was creepy. And there's this real heaviness about the room and all this stuff. And it's just like overwhelmingly like negative feeling. And then after a few minutes, I switched this light on and off several times to see if there was some kind of trickery with the light and everything, if I was seeing a shadow cast by something, and I couldn't recreate it. So I turned the light back off and I was like, man, it's been a long day. I'm tired, maybe I'm just seeing stuff, and I'm sitting there, and then it's like time starts to stand still. It's just the weirdest feeling. And I see out of the guys where his chest would be under the sheet, this white smoky mist coming out, almost like you would see when a campfire is going out, that smoke, just putting off a little bit of smokiness. Uh-huh. And I hear this voice from a long ways away say, no, I don't want to go. And it was the freakiest thing. And I'm like, and that light behind the bed started like buzzing and flicking on and off, typical paranormal activity when something is messing with the electronics in the lights, And I stand up again and I'm like, what is going on here, man? This is freaking weird. And about that time, I'm trying to flick the light on and everything again. And I got my hand on my weapon, and my partner kicks open the door. And he scares me so bad, like I almost jumped out of my boots, because I'm all concentrated on. And I said, man, I got to go to the bathroom. He goes, go ahead. I got it. He ain't going nowhere, So I pretty much run to the bathroom and I'm throwing cold water on my face saying, holy crap. I just see the Grim Reaper come and get this guy, we're take him to wherever the hell he was going. And it was the most crazy experience I ever had in law enforcement as far as any kind of paranormal stuff. And there's many other little weird things that I experienced over the years, but it's one of those fascinating things that I was just blown away by, like, wow, what was that? And I wrote about it in my book, and it's one of the stories in my book. And when you go to hospitals, just in general, they're some of the most haunted places there are, because if you think about all the pain and suffering and death that has occurred in hospitals, oh man, it's overwhelming. And I actually told that story on Paranormal 911 on the TV show. It's a story that came out of my book. They found out about it and they asked me to talk about it on that show. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's an awesome experience. And I agree with you about hospitals and nursing homes. They seem to be thick with all kinds of different things. And my dad was really sick, and we took my daughter in, and she was only about a year and a half old at this time. And she is telling us, as we're in my dad's room, that there's this lady that keeps reaching out of the wall, trying to touch her head and touch her hair. And so she kept flexing away from the wall. And at another time in the hospital with her again, we're taking her through the hallway, going to the records portion of the hospital. And this hospital's been around for a long time, and it's Catholic run. And we're walking through the hallways, and she's saying that there's people reaching out of the floors, and there was a wheelchair against the wall, and she asked, Daddy, why is that man broken? And I guess she was seeing a man in the wheelchair and looking really disheveled and broken, and so many different things going on there. When my mother-in-law was passing away in the nursing home, my daughter Nova, being 15 at this point, was staying the night with her because we didn't want her to be alone or feel alone. And I was bringing her food for the evening, and she asked if I had gone to the window because she saw a woman peering in the window, and she had a bun on the back of her head. And I was like, no, I got out of the car and brought this in. But it's interesting because that hospital and nursing home is brand new, but it's on land that was donated by the Ute tribe. So it makes you wonder what was there before these structures were built, and could that have been a native spirit peeking through the window with a bun on the back of her head, or something else? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, it's mind-blowing, and it's cool when you get to share some of your experiences on TV and different shows and do what you do on TV. But like I said, it's not the real, it's a double-edged sword. It's not the real paranormal, but it's good for the field in some aspects and bad in others. But, it's not what I do, not why I do what I do. I'm really out there, I'm boots on the ground, and I'm trying to find a little piece of that puzzle, and that's the reality of it. That's the real paranormal. It's folks like us that go out, spend our own time and money researching and investigating these phenomena, and trying to find answers. Whether we will or not, who knows? Whether we're supposed to know or not, who knows? But the journey is what fascinates me. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and I think the more evidence we gather, the more answers we can, or questions we can answer, so on and so forth. You have to have that proof. And these days it's hard as well because of Photoshop and other apps out there where you can make anything look like a paranormal video. So a lot of times you can tell, but sometimes it's hard to decipher, is this a real video or is this something somebody made up in their spare time?
Right, and that's the shame of it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff faked with CG and apps and everything else, and it just makes it harder. But, even if you, like I said earlier, if you can sit down, you could have a ghost sitting down with you, a guy telling you his name, and you prove that he's been dead since 1925, but you got him on camera and you're having a conversation with him and you can see him and everything else. People would still try to debunk it and say it's not real, even if it was real. So, you can't change people's minds unless someone's actually had an experience. They're going to believe what they want to believe. So you might as well just keep on moving, doing what you do, and don't worry about that, because there's always these armchair quarterbacks and keyboard warriors that are out there. They may be jealous that you're doing something they want to do and they don't have the means to do it, or whatever the case. You just keep doing what you're doing. If you enjoy doing it, do it. Just might be mindful about residentials. That's a whole different ball game than going on a public ghost hunt. And try to get with, if you're serious about it, and the more the merrier. If you're serious about it, get with a team that's been around, that has experience and knows what they're doing, and learn. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. That's the best way to learn, and get out there and do it. Like I said, there's no right or wrong, but there's certain things you just don't do. You don't go into people's homes telling they're demons when you're not, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and anytime, you come across somebody that says they're an expert, that's a red flag right there, because none of us in the field really are, and we're all learning from each other and learning from trial and error and doing it repeatedly. And
right. And that's a bad thing about TV too. They try to put these labels on people. They're an expert, and that's not necessarily the people on the shows that are saying that. There's some out there that, have an ego problem that, they want to be called an expert, but really, if you research and investigate and all that, just call it for what it is. I'm an investigator. I'm an author. I'm an investigator. I'm a researcher. You don't say there's really no such thing as a paranormal expert per se. There's only experience level, and that's the real deal of it. You've got people who have been doing it for 30 years and people have been doing it for 2 or 10 or whatever. But, when the word expert comes up in these shows, and they're an actor. Just remember that. Okay. Not all of them are actors, but the majority of them are actors. If you look them up, they're members of SAG. No one in the field has ever heard of them, and they're out there on a TV show. Doesn't mean they know any more than anyone else. Okay, but it's just they asked to be on a TV show, or they, they're on the lists of that these production companies look for, to be on a show or whatever the case. So you just got. I try to spread that word, because the people in the general public don't know the difference. They see a lot of people see what they see on TV and think that's real, or that just because someone's on TV means they're an expert. That's not the case. In fact, that's farthest from the case. And another good way to look at it is, if you see somebody on TV and they're on a paranormal show, if no one ever heard of them until they were on TV, then that's a good way to look at it. If you see someone and you look them up and they have a body of work before they were ever on TV, like they've written books, or they've done countless investigations on YouTube or whatever, guess what? Those are more than likely the folks that are boots on the ground, that have gone out and spent their own time to research and investigate this stuff legitimately, not on a TV show. Okay. That's how you decipher better who's real and who's an actor.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things out there, and it is Hollywood, and it all is really about making money. So a lot of times they portray it as the truth when it really isn't. But I don't know. Go ahead.
Hollywood, they'll have bits and pieces of truth in there, but they often, like, even on I'll give you an example with me. Like, the first show I did was called Terror in the Woods. It was about my Bigfoot experience. Okay. They added stuff in there that didn't happen, and they moved stuff around, and they took some of the real stuff out of it. And that's just what they do. When you agree to be on one of these shows, they make you sign a paper that they can portray it any way they want. I've even had it to seen where people, they will take your audio, what you said, and mix the words around and make it look like you said something completely different. And they can do that with technology. So, even the real people on there get frustrated too, because they add things that didn't happen. They're trying to make it more scary and more dramatic when they don't have to, because some of these accounts are insane, man. I mean, people's experiences, but that's just the nature of the game with TV. And I always try to tell folks that, just because someone's on TV doesn't mean they're by any means. Okay. 9 times out of 10, look at people's resume before you make a decision on whether you think they're the real deal or not. So just a word to the wise, per se.
Yeah, do a little homework. Don't buy into all the shenanigans.
Yeah.
So I've heard different stories about supernatural things that happen. One that I believe happened to me as a kid was often referred to as St. Elmo's fireball or whatnot. A lot of times it would appear during a thunder or electrical storm. And we had lost our power that day. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ball lightning, stuff like that.
Yeah, and this was when I was younger, and all our power went out, but it appeared right in front of the power pole, which I don't even think power was going through that. But it hovered there, and then it hit our front porch, came in through the floor, went slowly into the kitchen area, and then shot down the hallway out the back wall, not leaving a mark on anything. Just a loud clap when it hit, and then some sort of like static sort of sound once it came in. But that's some of the things that are supernaturally in our world. Do you think that could be due to having electricity in the air due to having a lightning storm and thunderstorm?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of phenomena that's naturally occurring that we just don't understand. Even mainstream science doesn't quite understand. And, especially when it comes to ball, lightning can strike from 20, 30 miles away, and it could be thunderstorm that far away you wouldn't even know it, but yet a lightning strike could have hit a power line and travel, the lightning, that force travel all the way down the lines, miles and miles away, and form into a ball. And moving through moving to someone's house, and they see it or whatever the case. You know, certain swamp gases can make lights, that are sometimes misconstrued as alien craft, and all kinds of other things. There's a lot of natural wonders and phenomena that we don't even understand about our own planet. There's talk of portals opening where people have been seen walking and wham, they just disappear into thin air, and that's been reported thousands of times throughout history. There's famous accounts of this, going on where a guy was out in his, I remember reading one, I can't remember the exact time, place, and date and the guy's name, but his family was sitting on the porch and he was out in the cornfield and right in front of the house, and he just disappeared right in front of their eyes, never to be seen again. What was that? Was that a portal opening and sucked him in? Or what was it, I mean, it's crazy.
I even heard that they could, for a while, still hear his voice, like hear him calling out and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, hear his voice, but can't see him. Did he just get sucked into a parallel dimension? That's crazy stuff.
It's like, what's really going on? Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me about that a couple weeks ago, and he said he wanted to go there and investigate it, and I'm just like, make sure you don't go by yourself. But I'm totally interested in what he finds, if he finds anything, because I think just tracking down that location could be difficult.
Yeah, make sure you tie a big rope to your butt so they can pull you back out too.
Right?
But you think about it, think about that, even in some of the movie, a lot of the movies we see, these horror movies, ghost movies, whatever, they have, some of the stories of such accounts in them. You think about that movie Poltergeist, when the little girl got sucked into the TV, and she actually was sucked into the next life or the other side, as they call it, and they were able to send the mom in to pull her out. So it's like just like we talk about people using these Ouija boards and they're opening doorways, and whatever feels like can come, if you don't close them properly, something can come through that you don't want to be there. So did they open a door to a parallel universe or another dimension, or what? Where do we go when we die? Does our spirit energy go to that next dimension or the other side? Are we still continuing to live as pure energy now, where we've left our body by itself and our energy has left our shell? It's all interconnected. It's all fascinating stuff.
Have you had any experience with or known someone who has with the Ouija board?
I don't use them. I've been in investigations where I filmed people using them, and I've seen a lot of negative effects. And then a lot of these cases, in residential cases I've done over the years, which I've done hundreds, and I did one time, I tried to tally up all my cases and the negative ones. And in 95% of those negative type haunting cases in residentials, all these people had used Ouija board. And these were the ones that, I kept separate, and I was like, man, kind of put them in their own category as a very negative type haunting where people were being scratched and all kinds of different things. And it would seem, to me, math doesn't lie. When you add that up and you look at that, you're like, it's kind of amazing saying, wow, all these people use a Ouija board at one time in their life. Did they garner some kind of negative entity attaching to them or spirit, whatever the case may be? And, it was kind of eye-opening to say, wow, 95% of them, they used a Ouija board, and what did they do? They opened the doorway, let crazy stuff in, didn't close it properly. Because a lot of people, they build this thing as a game, but maybe in reality, it was put out there to create chaos and whatnot, and let these negative entities run amok, so to speak, by opening a door that is not closed. You have to take a look at that and say, wow, hey, that's pretty compelling stuff. Now, many people, and I have friends that use a Ouija board as an investigative tool. I'm not saying do that. But me personally, I do not use them because, in my mind and the way I've seen them work many times is you have to allow a spirit or an entity to use your body to manipulate that planchette. You're becoming part of the tool. You're not just holding a recorder or a ghost box. You're using your body. You're allowing that spirit or entity to use to move that planchette. And to me, that's a no-no.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. I was raised not to use them, but when I was in the military, a guy named Private Black had actually been killed during training, and the board started getting passed back and forth. And so at that one point in my life, I did use the Ouija board, and I had a really cool experience. So I thought it was my mom. Everything she said, she even started off with my siblings' names and told me a bunch of things about the other side. And excitedly, I told my dad about that the very next day. And he told me, well, that might not have been your mom. That could have been something else trying to gain your trust. I never used it again after that, but it was a good experience for me. But I have heard and seen so many crazy stories going on. But we do have a caller from area code 206. Who are you talking to?
Hey, Tessa, it's Nikki.
Hey, Nikki, how's it going?
Doing all right tonight. Enjoying the show very much.
Well, thank you. Did you have a question or an experience you wanted to share?
You know me, I've got a lot of odd experiences.
Right.
But I had one yesterday that just kind of threw me for a loop, simply because I'm in a bookstore. And it's something that I did type up earlier, but I'm in a bookstore and I'm looking for a specific set of books. And I'd been there for a while, so nobody had been around me. And I hear this kind of odd sound, but I knew it was a book. It was just one of those sounds that, typically a book makes. And I turn around, and here's this very large book, wide open. It had fallen, and it was wide open. And I go to pick up the book. It hadn't dropped on the floor. It was still on the shelf. And pick up the book. And here it is, a book that a friend of mine, who is now deceased as of this year, had told me about 8 years ago. And one in which was telling me all this information about it. And when they told me about the info, I was like, man, I want to learn more about this. This is fascinating to me. Come to find out, I couldn't find any information that they had talked about it. And I'm like, did they really just, are they pulling my leg or what? And here's this book on this shelf, and it's about this information. And the book was wide open. And I'm like, and it's funny because my friend had been around off and on, but she is periodically, not all the time, but periodically. And I can feel him. And I didn't pay too much attention. But for the last 3 days prior, I kept getting told, you've got to go to the bookstore. You've got to go to the bookstore. And I'm like, all right, I'll go on Saturday. And here I am at the bookstore Saturday, and here's this book, and it's all about this information and the specific person that my friend had told me about and was telling me back then that I had to learn about this person for a very specific reason. And here's this book. And I'm like, okay.
Message
received.
Yeah,
that's not, yeah, exactly. That's not coincidence. And then a situation about a month ago where I had gone into the bathroom to wash my hands after petting the cat, and as I'm walking into the bathroom, that there was a evil spirit that I had gone against, basically, let's put it that way, and unexpectedly came back and very loudly in my head said, "You're going to die." And I went, you're going to get the heck out of my house. and out now, or I'm going to do my little, can't remember how I said it, but thing, and you're going to be forcibly removed. Didn't see hide nor hair, haven't seen hide nor hair of them again. And I'm like, wow, really? You're going to try again? And this comes after me being asked to, if I receive any information about this family for someone who is an investigator. And I gave them the information that I had received, and this evil, only other way to say it is evil spirit, came after me for giving the information to this investigator. And I'm like, yeah. So that made the fourth time that they tried to attempt to get to me. And I'm like, you know, I don't go for that BS. So yeah, I've got a lot of lovely little weird experiences like that.
Do you have any idea, like, who that was?
They don't like when you help people. The negative ones do not like when you try to help people. They will come after you.
Boy, did I find that out the hard way. I forgot about that from years ago. And wow, he could not go after me mentally, so he went after me physically. And I was fortunate at the time to have a friend on the phone with me, or on a Skype call with me. And I was like, I need help because I can't fight this off by myself. And they put a protective shield. The only way I can describe it is like a protective shield around me. And the second that was completed, it was like I could start breathing again. I was like, I came back within seconds. I came back into myself, and boy, did I get ticked. Then I went after it. And it came after me again a couple of times over the next few days after that. But yeah, you aren't kidding. When you get really strong ones like that, and they can't go after you mentally, they'll find some other way. I found that out the hard way. It's stuff I knew before, but when you haven't dealt with it in such a long time, wow, you get reminded whole big time. So I'm really glad to hear the kind of stuff that you're doing. I commend you tremendously, keeping up with it.
You talking to me or Teresa?
I'm talking to you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, yeah, it's really a hobby gone insane that I have a passion for, and that's the same with most people. We're all in our own search for answers for whatever reason. We may have lost loved ones at an early age, or we had experiences we can't explain, and we're just seeking answers. And like I said earlier, whether we find those answers or not, who knows? But the journey is fascinating.
Well, that's for sure. It certainly is. It certainly is. On that note, I'll leave you guys alone. But I'm really glad you're on the radio talking. It's really great to hear your stories.
Yeah, thanks for calling in.
Thanks so much, Nikki. It was great hearing your stories. And I know
I've got a whole lot more.
Oh, yeah. You're in the field of paranormal and ufology and Bigfoot. You've got all kinds of pokers in the fire. So keep up the good work on your end as well.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm a newbie, but getting back into the swing of things. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.
Good night, Nikki.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Yeah, there's just so many variations of stories that are out there, and Andrew's in the chat room, and I've been trying to get him in here with some of his trucker stories because I've had heard a few of those from him, and they're very interesting. But on that note, you were saying how you grew up in New Mexico. Did you ever have any encounters or hear any stories about skinwalkers?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about skinwalkers. I never had an encounter. Some of my friends have said they've had encounters with them. And you hear it, from Native Americans as well. Um, but yeah, that's one thing, one entity I don't think I ever want to have an encounter with. Is a skinwalker. That's a creepy uh, thing and entity, and it's one of those things you don't. I personally don't ever want to have an encounter with one. So when you hear the natives talk about it, and you hear people that have had experiences with them, I mean, it's pretty creepy stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And I was talking to someone just the other day, and I was like, I'd much rather deal with ghosts and spirits and dark entities than skinwalkers, because to me, that's much scarier. Man, it's right there in your face. And I've grown up in the Four Corners area, and I have had a couple encounters with skinwalkers, and it seems like everybody's story, some of them are close to the same, but a lot of them are very different, and it kind of preys upon, I guess, your trust. One of my friends told me how she was in Utah going to visit family and going down a road, and she saw this old native lady with the coral necklace on and the shawl and the long dress, and walking down the road trying to get a ride. And it was pretty late, so she didn't pull over. And then she saw her again. This time the lady is limping. And then saw her again down the road, and she's kind of dragging her foot. Then the very last time, she's right in front of the car, so they put the brakes on, put it in reverse, and went the opposite direction. For me, my first encounter was seeing it in basically animal form. It looked like a pack of coyotes encroaching upon my house, and I'm sitting outside smoking on my back porch, and I can just see their eyes reflectively glowing off of the back porch light, getting closer and closer, but they wouldn't come into the line of the light for some reason. And I quickly threw my cigarette down and went into the house. But it had been many years after that, and we're going down to Phoenix, so this is between Tuba City and Kayenta, and we're telling the kids different skinwalker stories that we've experienced, or friends' stories, and we're looking for our own skinwalkers and trying to pass the time with the kids. And all of a sudden we see this red and white small Chevy truck on the side of the road with the doors open and the interior lights on, but there's nobody in or around the truck. And then about 200 yards, perhaps, down the road, there's this really tall blonde lady, and from a distance it looked like a pregnant lady on the side of the road walking, trying to make her way to get gas or who knows what. And as we get closer, we realize she's not pregnant. Like, her stomach is out of her shirt and her pants are popped open, and it looks as if she's eaten a person. And her arms are reaching down below her knees to halfway down her calf. It was really weird and awkward, and she was faced the other way as far as her face, so I couldn't see what her eyes or anything like that looked like, but it was quite creepy. And my husband's like, hey, you want to turn around and help her? And I was like, no way are we turning around to help that thing. That is not a her, that's an it.
Really? That's creepy. Well, you hear a lot of these stories about, like, these grinning men and these the Hat Man and Slender Man and all these crazy type of encounters alongside roadways and stuff. And those are some of the most creepy tales there are. Black-eyed children. My buddy Weatherly, man, he wrote the book on black-eyed children, and he put it on the map, so to speak. And he's told me some just hair-raising encounters from people he's interviewed, and some of his own encounters, over the years. And those are, some of that, seems to be folklore tales, but when you sit back and really take a look at it, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of people that claim to have these experiences with these entities. And it's, he also wrote the book Strange Intruders, and those stories are just, creepy as you can get, with these beings that are malevolent in nature, and they're out to do no good. And you just hear all these different ones, and they're just, whoa, wait a minute, man. It makes you not ever want to stop and help someone that may really need help.
Right? It's very scary. Call the cops. They might show up in an hour. I know the cops out there in that area have a very widespread route that they have to go. But we do have a caller from area code 402. Who are we talking to?
Hey guys, it's Andrew. Hey Dave, what's up?
What's going on?
Hey, Andrew.
Not much. Hey. Yeah, Dave's all right. He's pretty cool. I was in the live stream that night where he got whacked. But anywho,
We can barely hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear him.
all right, how about that?
That's way better.
Yeah,
Okay. Anywho, everybody knows I'm an over-the-road truck driver, so I got a couple stories. Which one do you want to hear, Tess? Where I was driving down somewhere in the south, and I seen during the super flood moon and the super moon.
Can you get closer to the phone again?
losing you.
Oh, how about that?
Much better.
You guys, all right. Anywho, I was down in the south. Well, this must have been late at night, early in the morning. I seen two shadows jump up out of the middle of the interstate. You got to realize I'm maxed out at 70-something miles an hour, and did a double take for a minute, and it was pretty interesting. I've seen different things. 2 years ago, I was driving between Indiana and the Illinois state line there, and a couple of us drivers were talking about maybe a UFO in the sky because they kept getting brighter and brighter and dimming out. I've slept in crazy places. I've slept in Defiance, Ohio. I've actually slept out in the middle of the desert in New Mexico between White Sands and Holloman Air Force Base. That's pretty...
Yep, been there many times.
Yeah, I've done a couple investigations. I've been to the Malvern Manor.
You're fading out again.
Can't hear you.
Fading out again? How about that?
Better.
Yeah, right there.
Keep it right there.
Sorry. Cell phone. Yeah, I've had quite a bunch of interesting stuff. I've shared some of it with Tessa. And, yeah, I had a interesting night at Malvern Manor. I seen a shadow person for the first time, and actually got an EVP towards the end of the night of peekaboo, because I asked who popped out. And another crazy experience I had personally.
You must be driving because I can't hear him at all.
Mike's still cutting out, Tessa. Okay. Yeah. The spirits at Malvern Manor were I even got it somewhere. The spirits were even talking about my dad, and my dad passed away back in 2013, and he was in the Air Force during Vietnam, and he still comes through every once in a while. But yeah, they recognize his military rank and everything. They call him the yes sergeant and everything. It's a real interesting field, the paranormal, because you don't know what's going to happen one minute from the next.
Yeah, it's certainly awesome. And you were fading out again, but when your family does come to see you and they let you know that they're there, and it just makes you feel better, because on our end, we really love and miss them and hate that they're gone, but for them, it's a really freeing and exhilarating experience.
Yeah. The funny thing about it was, when we did the walkthrough with Josh at Malvern Manor, he said there was a new spirit that had been there for a couple of days. And not sure, but he said that he was standing in the hallway with his arms crossed. He was real tall, so I kind of figured that my dad knew I was coming to visit. So if they do show up, I guess at different locations. That was new to me. So, and he did come through on a ghost box. So we did have that saved from our ghost group overnight investigation. It was real crazy there at Malvern. So that's all I got.
Well, cool, man. Appreciate you calling in, sharing your stories.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew.
Yep.
It was so good to hear your voice, and hope to see you later on tonight.
All right. Catch you guys later.
All right, drive safe and keep on trucking.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And guys that are on the road like that, man, they see all kinds of crazy stuff. And you know, that's the people you want to hear from because they're out there, they're seeing it, they're experiencing it. You know, there's all kind of tales from truck drivers and people that spend a lot of time on the road, you know. And just like we were talking about that story, you know, those stories of those strange entities alongside the roadsides, and bam, he calls in. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love to hear those, and there's so many different ones that just made me remember again my very first encounter with a skinwalker. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it going alongside of our car, and we're doing about 65, 70 miles an hour, and it's just screaming at us. We couldn't see it, and we tried to turn our music up to where we couldn't hear it, and of course we all locked all the doors around us and rolled up our windows really tight. But yeah, we heard one before we even had actually seen one, and it makes you wonder, like, how do they run so fast and accelerate and do the things they do? And I've heard that in order to be a skinwalker, it's a sort of ancient magic, and you have to take a life in order to take form of other things. Sometimes it's intentional, so it's a darker magic, but for those that are born and their mother dies during childbirth, that's another way that people do it, and so it's kind of like a religion to those people, and they do it differently. There's a story that I read from the Navajo police where they had been chasing some coyotes that were running alongside vehicles and darting in and out of traffic, and then once the police started chasing them, they chased them all the way back into a little cavernous cliff area where they couldn't go anywhere, and by the time they got to them, there were no longer coyote or prairie wolves. They were humans with facial paint, and it was a male and female, and there was really no charges that they pressed because they said they were practicing their religion. So there's different aspects of it, but the scarier ones, like, really freaks me out. Makes my skin crawl right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Crazy stuff. It's all part of the supernatural realm, you know.
Well, we're in the last 10 minutes of the show, so I know you've written several books. Do you want to go over those and where people can find and purchase these certain books that you've written?
Well, yeah, you can purchase all my books off of Amazon. Just type in my name under authors, and you'll see what I've written in my books as well. The best way to see what I'm doing, what I've done, and what I've got coming up, like events that I'm appearing at, just go to my website. It's www.davespinks.paranormalinvestigator.com. If you type my name in Google, you'll see my website pop up. A lot of the radio shows I've been on, TV shows, the whole 9 yards. One thing we didn't really touch on was my haunted location called Willow's Weep in Indiana. Just jump on the website. You can read all about it. Crazy, crazy location. It was just did a segment on the new show Unexplained on History Channel. William Shatner was the host. Did a big segment on the house there. A lot more coming with that, hopefully. Things are looking good with it. I bought that place just to study the paranormal, you know, so it's something that I think needs to be done, and we're pushing forward with that, trying to have a place where it's just nothing as basically a paranormal laboratory, you know. So I've got, you know, I've written in like you said in the beginning of the show, a good friend of mine's series, David Weatherly's Wood Knock series. Book number 4 is getting ready to come out in that series. It's some of the best cryptid researchers and investigators in the world when it comes to Bigfoot that are all included in that series. I wrote my own Bigfoot book called West Virginia Bigfoot. And then the new haunting series, Real West Virginia Hauntings Volume 1 is out. Real West Virginia UFOs is on its way out. And a book about Willow's Weep is on its way out, with much more coming. I'll be speaking this month at the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I'll also be at the Haunted Heyman House doing an event there. I'm also at the West Virginia Outdoor Adventure speaking there, and just all kinds of stuff going on. So just jump on my website. You'll see what I've got coming, and plenty more to come.
Well, that's exciting, and it's very interesting that you did buy a place specifically to investigate it. How many spirits do you have going on there?
Well, I'm not sure. This place is unlike any other haunted location I've ever seen. All the little nuances, there's a lot to be said. I mean, we could have done the entire show on this house tonight, but maybe we'll save that for another time. 7 confirmed deaths, 2 by two by suicide. One either was a suicide OD or accidental OD. I'm not sure, but we got 7 confirmed deaths that are associated with the house, and several more that I'm looking into right now. The house was built in the 1800s. It's just a phenomenal location with all the little nuances and strange deaths that have occurred. There's some pretty normal deaths in the house too, dating back to the original builders and stuff. So, a lot of stuff coming out on this place. So you can also, if you look on the YouTube or on my website, under the Will's Wheat page, you will see a video clip that was taken off the show Unexplained. It's a 6-minute clip. It's just basically a teaser about the house, and it's under the show Evil Places on Unexplained. And it's just crazy. I mean, it's crazy, crazy, crazy place. And a lot of paranormal stuff has been recorded by numerous investigators there over the years, to include myself, and that's why I ended up buying it from the former owner. According to her, she felt the house tried to kill her and her husband 2 different times, and she was just done with it. And she contacted me, and that's why I said, hey, what better of a place we can use to study the paranormal, So that's what I'm doing with it.
That's awesome, and I'm so glad you're able to do that. And how scary for her. Man, I wish I'd known that before we came on, but like you said, we'll save it for next time because I am so into these sort of topics. But thank you again, Dave, for coming onto my show and being an awesome guest and putting up with my shenanigans.
It's my pleasure anytime. I always enjoy talking to paranormal. I can do it all night long. I love talking about it and hearing other folks' stories and experiences as well. That's what it's all about, I mean, it's everybody who's experienced these things and who's actively pursuing answers. It's fascinating stuff. So I appreciate you having me on to share my experiences and what I'm doing.
Well, thank you so much again, and I can't wait to have you back again in the near future.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dave. Good night to you. Hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. And thank you all for coming out and listening on Late Night in the Mountains from We Are Paradox Media. Look out for future shows. Tomorrow night we have Sleepy Dave Davenport on, and he does an amazing show. He's been running shows beforehand, just practicing and sharpening his tools. So you guys look out for him tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central, and 10 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my listeners and friends out there. Can't wait to talk to you again next weekend. Until then, don't work too hard and take care of my ewes.